Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a build guide on how to make the HAMMERDIN Spiritborn in Diablo 4. I know lots of people have been wondering, where's my paladin? So I sought out to make the HAMMERDIN, the classic paladin build in D4, and I think I've recreated the gameplay as close as we can get. We've got that Enigma teleporting, we've got the blessed hammer style of projectile going out, striking enemies. This build got me through the campaign easily, well into Torment 1. Torment 2 was on my way to Torment 3. There's lots of room for optimization here. I don't have any ancestral items, any masterworking. We only had limited playtime pre-release, but now that the game is out, we're going to be figuring out how to perfect this build, how to get the most out of it. In this video, I'll walk you through the gear, the mercenaries, the skills, the Paragon setup that I've been using. But if you see ways to improve on this setup, folks, sound off in the comments. And it all starts with this specific aspect, the pestilence aspect. Imprint it. Stinger spawns a pestilent swarm. Pestilent swarm is the operative mechanic here. At its target location, deals damage. Now, pestilent swarms last 100% longer and spiral outwards. That's what gets us the HAMMERDIN playstyle. Now we're going to want to spawn more of these pestilent swarms, so we're also going to get the infestation aspect. On lucky hit, centipede skills have a 35% chance to spawn a pestilent swarm, deal a bunch of damage. Pestilent swarms now also deal 100% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 6 seconds, so we're getting more buffs to that pestilent swarm there. Then I'm also using a rune word that's going to get us yet more pestilent swarms. It's a pretty easy to get rune, and what it does is it invokes the Spiritborn's pestilent swarm. So that is the Tal rune. Simple blue rune here, very easy to get, early level. Again, I had this build working during the campaign. Now presently, I'm triggering it with a Zan rune. That's whenever I cast my ultimate, but you can always have a different trigger if you want. We'll come back to take a closer look at the gear in a little bit, but let's do a bit more of an overview of the build itself. We are a centipede build, but I am Eagle Spirit. With the Spiritborn, you get to select a main spirit and a secondary spirit. They can both be the same. Now you're going to note that this is a crit-based build. So the secondary of Eagle, every 4 meters you move, your crit strike chance is increased. Highly mobility-based, crit-based. We're also taking the main Eagle spirit. That's going to make all of our skills now also have the Eagle keyword on it. And this is going to be spawning Storm Feathers whenever we evade. Storm Feathers increase your movement speed by 20 seconds for 1 second when they're picked up. So a big part of this build is going to be maxing out our move speed for high mobility and for a synergy here of your Eagle skill damage is increased by 9% of your movement speed bonus with the Brilliance passive right over here. But let's take a bit of a step back from the start here. Now, we're a build that relies on poison damage, on poisoning damage, that's a poison dot, plus crit. Despite the fact that damage over time effects cannot crit, we're still going to benefit from this. And we're going to have the move speed synergy with our damage as well. For our generator, we're taking the poison one, Withering Fist. That's going to apply a poison dot. By poisoning enemies, we're going to be generating more of our energy, that's vigor. And the third hit on this generator is going to spread around that poisoning even more. Spiritborn's kind of like the monk in D3, where all these generators are 3-hit combos. Then for our core skill, we're taking Stinger here. This hits for poison damage, it applies poisoning, and we're taking Rampant Stinger for additional single target damage. Now remember, Stinger is spawning our pestilent swarms. Then we're going to max out the velocity passive here if you've dealt damage within the last 5 seconds. And our moving, you generate 6 vigor per second. This is a speedrunning build. Then we need the Enigma teleport, right? So here's where our mobility skill comes in, Soar. If Soar hits no enemies, you gain a 50% move speed buff. Again, great for speedrunning. Otherwise, your next attack after hitting an enemy with Soar is going to be a crit. And this is also going to make enemies vulnerable. Then a nice 1-2 punch is Soar into Vortex. Vortex is going to scoop enemies in close to you. And the next skill that you cast after Vortex will have its damage increased by 20%. And when you land crits with Vortex, because we're a crit-based build, it has a cooldown reduced by 1 second, so we're able to Vortex even more in the midst of combat. We are scooping enemies back into us to be able to apply our poison dots to them, to be able to get them to build up density for our hammers coming out to strike them. We're maxing out Mirage. That gives you dodge chance while you're evading. And whenever you dodge, you gain increased Crit strike chance. Again, maxing out that crit strike. We're taking swift. Your mobility skill cooldowns are reduced by up to 3 seconds based on how far you travel with them. So that's really going to help be able to soar so that you can cross distances very rapidly. Then over here in defensive, we're not taking any skills, but we are going to take anti-venom. You gain 45% increased poison resistance, and your max poison res is increased by 9%. And then nourishment, maxing that as well. Your healing is increased by 20%. Whenever you heal, your poisoning damage is increased by 9% for 3 seconds. Now, if you don't need the resist, you can always knock points out of anti-venom, but again, while leveling, this is really good. Poison damage or poisoning damage is very harsh in this game. Then in potency here, we're taking Touch of Death, and this is to have another means through which to be applying poison dots, as well as some sustain here. So you infect an enemy with this, and then if the host dies, or when the poison dot elapses, it then goes and seeks out someone else. So it keeps self-perpetuating. You can have 3 of these swarms active at once. And you want to have 3 of these active because you're going to be getting healed every second that these are active. And then invasive Touch of Death is going to apply even more poisoning to enemies constantly. Pretty much if an enemy is on screen, it's going to be under a poisoning effect. Then over here, we're taking 3 points into Brilliance. Your Eagle skill damage is increased by 9% of your move speed bonus. We're going to be capped out at 200% move speed, which is going to be an 18% damage multiplier here. And then Acceleration, casting an Eagle skill grants 15% increased move speed for 4 seconds. After you evade, your next Eagle skill deals 30% increased damage. So we want to be evading constantly in combat. Because we have the Eagle Spirit, all of our skills, despite them all being all of our damage skills being Centipede, also are flagged as Eagle skills. So again, after every time we dodge, we're going to get a 30% damage buff. Now Ravenous here is a good option. Our Centipede skills are going to deal more damage. There's even a potential crowd control angle that I'm considering exploring here by going down Oppressive, but we'll continue through the setup that I'm using. The Devour. This is the big Centipede ultimate. We are trying to... I've reached a point where I have 100% uptime on my Centipede, in fact. It's really cool, but even early game, you still have a lot of access to this skill. Big, powerful ult, really cool, really satisfying. He does raw damage, he applies poisoning, and while he is active, if a non-boss enemy's remaining life becomes poisoned, they die instantly and unleash a pestilent swarm. So this is how you're getting a bunch of your hammers flying out. And because this is not poisoning damage, it's not a poison dot, it does benefit from crit damage. And then our keystone passive here, Noxious Resonance. Your critical strikes cause your poisoning on an enemy to burst, dealing 100% of the total poisoning instantly to them and 20% of it to surrounding enemies before removing that poisoning effect from the primary target. This is why it's so important to be applying poisoning all the time. Constant crit eruptions. And the damage is increased by 30% of your critical strike damage bonus, so you also want to be stacking crit damage. Then back over here, we're taking Resolution, casting an ult grants 15% increased damage to elites for 3 seconds. Double this bonus if you're only fighting one enemy. This build specializes in dealing with big crowds. It's not as strong against single target. So we're trying to shore up the weaknesses here. We're maxing out Intricacy upon casting an ult. Then the last different potency, defensive, or focus skill you cast prior is reset and can be cast for free up to 3 times in the next 5 seconds. This is a great way to get past your Touch of Death 13-second cooldown. You pop Touch of Death, then you pop your Centipede, Devourer, and then you can pop 3 more Touch of Deaths if you want to. You ideally want to pop at least 2 so that you can have your 3 Swarm or Infection or whatever they're called applied at a time. So those are the operative skills. Playstyle, pretty straightforward. Your generator, you're going to hit. Your spender is Stinger. Then your mobility is going to be Soar. You also, if you're stuck in a fight for a long time, you might want to pop Soar multiple times to keep that vulnerable in application. Similarly with your Vortex, you want to be popping that pretty much off cooldown to keep enemies scooped in, and you want to be mindful of what skill you're going to cast after Vortex to benefit from that 20% increased damage. That's going to depend on exactly what's coming up off rotation. If you see your ultimate is about to pop, wait another second or two, then pop Vortex, then pop your ultimate. Your Touch of Death, you're pretty much popping off cooldown. Again, you want to be maintaining all 3 of those stacks at a time. And your Devourer, once you have perma uptime, you keep it up permanently. Before that, bring it out anytime you encounter an elite pack, basically. Now I'll come back to the gear. We're going to go over some early game gearing options here. For the helm, might, very good, 20% damage reduction. Once you get one of these, a Harmony of Ibikwaka is very strong. Now for your chest piece, while you're still leveling up, if you're not meeting your armor quota, you need 1,000 armor to max out your armor. You can either go with a Juggernaut or Disobedience. Why I don't like Juggernaut is that it increases your evade cooldown by 100%, and you want to be evading because every time you evade, you're dealing more damage right after. So ideally, go with a Disobedience. Otherwise, if armor's not a problem, you can go with Undying. This is going to make you heal every time you cast a skill. Otherwise, if you eventually get a Jacinth Shell, this makes you heal whenever you are spending resource, but every second your active cooldowns each drain 10% of your max life, but to reduce their cooldown durations by 3 seconds. And it's thanks to this that I have no more downtime on my Centipede, on my ultimate. Now another basic rune word that I have here is Sem Gar. The Gar rune makes it that you gain 2% crit strike chance for 5 seconds. I'm putting in the trigger of Sem, which is when you cast Evade. Again, we're able to evade quite a bit, so we're getting a little bit of a crit strike buff here. I don't have a lot of rune options. Once I can get a better rune to trigger a greater amount of crit strike chance here, that's probably what I'm going to want to go for. But overall, there's probably a lot better rune options. I don't have any good runes yet. Now for your boots, early game, Boots of Haste. Every second while moving, gain a bunch of bonus to move speed for 2 seconds, up to 90%. Once you reach the move speed cap, there's no point in getting more and more move speed stacking. Right now, I'm way over cap on my move speed. 200% move speed is the max move speed bonus, so I need to find places to remove move speed and reallocate points. But again, early game, you're going to want to be stacking that move speed wherever you can. Right now, I've swapped to Yen's Blessing instead. Help give me a bunch more resists. Also has an additional 2 max evade charges. So you can do 3 evades in quick succession, therefore getting not a 6, but a 12% bonus to crit strike chance. Why? Because if you see, when you evade with the Sem rune, you're generating 50 of the rune resource, and it only costs 25 in order to benefit from Gar. So we are benefiting from Gar twice, so with every evade, we're actually gaining a 4% crit strike chance. Now for pants, again, while leveling, you can kind of mix and match between Undying, Juggernauts, Disobedience. Another option though is Soil Power. This makes it that on lucky hit, you got a chance to cast a Mystic Circle on the ground, and if you cast a Centipede skill, any of your damaging skills, while sitting in this circle, it's going to apply poisoning damage to enemies around them. Overall though, I feel we have enough poisoning. I don't think this is necessary, but if there's a way to work it in, if you got the room for it, why not? This also lets you spread crowd control effects around, so when I was trying to tackle a more crowd control centric angle, this is factoring more into the equation. Otherwise, now I'm using Tassos of the Dawning Sky. Again, a bunch more, max all resist. Just really strong defensive option here. Then another useful aspect here is Reapers. Enemies you poison, which is freaking everyone all the time, have 100% reduced healing, and your Eagle skills gain up to 45% increased crit strike chance against them. So this build has effectively 100% crit strike chance. We are always critting. Just to be sure of that, again, working in a smiting aspect on the ring, you have up to 23% increased crit strike chance against injured enemies. Now I'm at a point where my crit chance is probably over 100%, so I could probably afford to lose some sources of crit chance. But again, while leveling, when you need it, these are easy ways to stack up to get effectively 100% crit chance. Then the Ring of the Midnight Sun. Man, this ring makes you never run out of resource. When you critically strike, i.e. literally all the time, you regain 50% of the vigor you've spent in the last 2 seconds. Getting this ring is the difference between needing to use your generator almost all the time to never needing to use it. You'll still want to use it in order to apply poisoning effects, tap it every so often. If you are still running with a might aspect, then of course you want to be maintaining that 20% damage reduction. Otherwise, before you get that ring, another option you can go with is Insatiable. Kills extend the duration of your active Touch of Death swarms. When a swarm is replaced early, it bursts for a bunch of of the damage it would have done. And again, because this is not a dot, it is going to benefit from your crit damage. You can go with an aspect of elements, just a flat damage buff every, half the time. Can't go wrong with elements. Falling feathers could be an interesting option. An aspect of the expectant actually makes a lot of sense while you're still using your generator a lot. After attacking enemies with a basic skill, increase the damage of your next core skill cast within 5 seconds, up to 30%. You can also go with an Edge Masters for extra damage, but ultimately you do want to aim for Ring of the Midnight Sun unique. Now, Mercenaries are a new thing, and for my active Mercenary, I've taken Aldkin the Cursed Child here. Aldkin's going to alternate between 2 curses. One of those is going to burn your resource per second, which is why it's even more important to have that extra resource gen. So I selected Curse of Flames, then I took Raging Violence here. Allies gain 15% crit strike chance against enemies affected by Flame Surge. And then I took Wave of Flame so that I can then take Raging Havoc. Enemies damaged by Aldkin's Wave of Flame take 15% increased damage over time for 4 seconds. Now that I have enough crit chance, I might swap to a different Mercenary. There might be room for optimization here. As my Reinforcement Mercenary, I have Rhykker. He's a defensive one. I have it set that whenever I become injured, he's going to cast Provoke, which is going to taunt enemies and give me damage reduction. Just a little thing to help save me if I'm in trouble. Now, Paragon, we're not going to go through everything, but real quickly here, I'm taking the Spirit Glyph. This is going to give me more crit strike damage, and critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you 15%. And again, we're critting them all the time. Our first Paragon board, we're taking Drive. After moving 10 meters, you deal increased damage. We're moving all the time. We're taking the Fitness Glyph, more crit strike damage. Skills that critically strike generate 3 vigor. Again, goodbye all of our resource problems. Next, we're taking the Convergence board. You deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your 2 highest bonuses to damage types combined, up to 30% total. This just seems altogether to be a pretty good legendary node for stacking damage. We're taking the Bane Glyph, more poison damage, which ties into what we just said. And then poisoning damage effects have a 15% chance to deal double the amount of damage over their duration. Next, we're taking the Sapping legendary node. When you cast 3 of a given spirit in a row, you restore 15% of your vigor and deal 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. We are spamming our damage skill. We're taking the Canny Glyph, increased non-physical damage, and non-physical damage increases all the non-physical damage an enemy takes from you up to 10%. And then our last board, we're not taking a legendary node on it. I'm taking Spiny Skin, but it could be any board really. And I'm using the Talon Glyph, increased eagle damage, because our skills are also eagle skills, and your eagle skills deal 15% increased critical strike damage. Now, of course, wherever you can, you want to be maxing out your armor, you want to be maxing out your resists. Otherwise, I'm trying to find ways to stack more lucky hit chance, in fact. Now that I have enough crit chance elsewhere on my gear, I want to get lucky hit chance, because again, with the infestation aspect, it's lucky hit that's going to make your Centibeat skills cast your Hammered-In hammers. So there you have it, folks. That's an intro to this build. I know that's a lot of information, and again, I'm sure there's going to be ways to optimize this further. Stay tuned for more information. Again, in the meantime, this setup, as I presented it, the leveling setup, destroyed the campaign, destroyed everything in Torment 1, easily got me to Torment 2, and I've been working my way to Torment 3. With the press preview build, it's been really hard to get resources to temper and masterwork my gear, but if I were fully masterworked up to where I could be right now, I'm sure I can get into T3 and we'd be on our way to T4. Also, folks, if you want some free cosmetics in Diablo 4, from October 8th to November 5th, you can get cosmetics just by watching Twitch streams. There'll be new cosmetics to farm up every week. You gotta watch at least 3 hours a week to earn the cosmetics of the week. You can watch me at twitch.tv/Rhykker. Also during this time period, if you buy or gift 2 subs, you get this horse, and 4 subs will get you the horse armor as well. Also, folks, we're doing the Patreon banner this year. Anyone who is a Patreon supporter by October 31st at patreon.com/Rhykker, even at the $1 pledge, will get your name on the shirt. And that's going to wrap up this video, folks. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.